What you just heard, that sound, took one man 40 minutes to bring back to life. 3 engineers couldn't do it. 2 specialist firms couldn't do it. And the man who eventually did it, he was called a useless monkey before he even touched the car. This is that story. His name is Daniel Okafor, 36 years old, single father, owner of a small but immaculate garage tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store on the south side of the city. He opened this garage with $8,000, a second-hand hydraulic lift, and 17 years of knowledge he had poured into himself, book by book, engine by engine, failure by failure, because no institution had ever looked at him and seen someone worth investing in. Every morning before his daughter Amara woke up, Daniel was already in the garage, not because he had to be, because he loved it, because there was nothing in the world that felt more honest to him than a broken machine and the silence required to understand it. He wasn't chasing recognition, he was just doing the work. His name was Victor Hale, 51, CEO of a private equity firm. A man who had spent his entire adult life in rooms where everyone nodded when he spoke, and nobody pushed back when he was wrong. He arrived that Tuesday morning in a flatbed truck because his Ferrari SF90 Stradale, worth over $500,000, had refused to start for the 3rd consecutive day. He had already spent $11,000 on 2 specialist firms. Neither had found the fault. His regular mechanic, who was white, wore a pressed shirt, and operated out of a glass-fronted workshop in the city's financial district, had shrugged and suggested the issue might be electrical, possibly requiring the car to be returned to Ferrari's factory service. Victor Hale did not accept shrugs. A business associate had quietly mentioned Daniel's name, specifically, reluctantly, mentioned that Daniel had a reputation for finding things other people missed. Victor had laughed when he heard it, but here he was. Daniel walked out of the garage wiping his hands on a cloth the way he always did, calm, unhurried, present. Victor Hale looked at him, and what happened next is the part of this story that is hardest to tell, not because it is complicated, but because it is so ordinary, so devastatingly, shamefully ordinary. Victor looked Daniel up and down, the work clothes, the dark skin, the modest garage behind him, and before Daniel had said a single word, before he had introduced himself or asked a question or demonstrated a single thing, Victor Hale turned back to the associate who had brought him and said, "This is your expert? What is he going to do? Eat the engine?" Then he looked directly at Daniel. "No offense, but I need someone who actually knows what they're doing, not some useless monkey playing with tools." Dead silence. Dylan, Daniel's young apprentice, went still in the corner. The associate who had made the referral looked at the floor. Daniel said nothing for a long moment. Then he looked at the Ferrari on the flatbed. Then he looked at Victor Hale. "You want the car fixed or not?" he said. He didn't ask for an apology. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain himself or defend himself or perform dignity for the benefit of a man who had already decided he had none. He just walked to the car because the car hadn't insulted him. The car just needed help. Daniel spent the first 20 minutes doing what he always did, listening, sitting inside it, running the startup sequence again and again, not for data but for sound, for feel, for the almost imperceptible difference between a system that was broken and a system that was lying about being broken. Then he spent 15 minutes underneath it, then 5 minutes with a single diagnostic tool, not the $40,000 proprietary system the specialist firm had used, but a modest modified reader that Daniel had personally calibrated over years of use because he didn't trust factory settings. He stood up. He walked to his workbench. He picked up 2 tools. He returned to the car. And 11 minutes later, the Ferrari SF90 Stradale, which had been silent for 3 days, which had defeated 2 specialist firms and generated an estimate for factory repatriation, started. Clean, immediate, thunderous. Victor Hale stood in the garage doorway and stared at the car. The sound of the engine filled every corner of the space, every corner of the silence he had created with his words an hour earlier. Daniel didn't smile, didn't gloat. didn't look at Victor with anything resembling triumph or told you so. He simply set his tools down on the workbench and began writing up the service notes the way he did after every job. Victor walked toward him slowly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, quietly, almost inaudibly beneath the sound of the engine, "What was it?"
Corrupted adaptive software node controlling the hybrid power unit, Daniel said without looking up from his notes. It wasn't returning fault codes because the corruption was in the monitoring layer itself. The layer that reports whether other layers are functioning. The system was telling you it was fine because the part that was broken was the part responsible for telling you things were broken. He looked up then. Your specialists were listening to the car's report. I listened to the car. Victor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What came out was not enough. It was nowhere near enough. And on some level, even Victor Hale, a man of monumental ego and limited self-reflection, seemed to understand that. But it was something. I shouldn't have said what I said. Daniel held his gaze for a moment, just long enough. No, he said simply. You shouldn't have. He handed Victor the invoice and turned back to his workbench. That evening, Daniel picked up Amara from school. She was 8 years old and had opinions about everything, and was currently working on a drawing of a racing card that she intended to give him for his birthday. She looked at him in the car the way children look at their parents when they can feel something without being told. "Good day," she asked. He thought about the morning, the words, the silence, and the engine roaring back to life. The invoice handed over without ceremony. "Yeah," he said, "and good day." Racism doesn't take a day off, neither does excellence. The next time you look at someone and decide what they're capable of before they've spoken, remember this story. You might be looking at the only person in the room who can actually help you. Share this if you believe skill has no skin color.